Cloud. Well, thank you for attending. We're happy to have Marc Lundstrom, the Director of Learning Design and Development for DSU Online, and Lisa Welch, Associate Professor of Dental Hygiene, as our facilitators for today's workshop, which is Authentic Learning Activities for the Online Classroom. And authentic learning is one of our core pillars of the university. And so, and we know that it also is critical for student success. One of the best ways to increase student engagement and participation and motivation is to implement authentic learning activities. But this can be challenging, especially in an online environment. So we're looking forward to learning from Marc and Lisa about some ideas, and to have those of you in the presentation share some ideas as well. So we'll turn the rest of the time over to Marc Lundstrom and Lisa Welch as our facilitators, and maybe they'll tell us a little bit about themselves as well.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, for sure. We're excited to be a part of this presentation, and thanks for giving us the opportunity. And I'm glad, Terry, that you mentioned that maybe some of you will be able to share some of your ideas during this as well, because that's certainly a part of our presentation, and we really hope to hear from you as well on this topic. So, and yes, we'll share just a little bit about ourselves. So I'll start here. Again, as Terry mentioned, I'm the Director of Learning Design and Development at DSU Online here on campus. And just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Northern Utah, started my career up north. And then I went to the University of Missouri for about 8 years, and just recently came back from the University of Missouri and started here at Dixie State in January. And it's been great to be here. I really love the Red Rock and all the fun adventures that can be had here. Lastly, I also teach online. I started teaching online, I should say, instructional design graduate courses online in 2015. So I'll leave it at that.
My name's Lisa Welch. I teach in dental hygiene. I'm very happy to have been invited to help with this little presentation today. I have a doctorate in education for health professions, so I do have quite a bit of educational background, and that was all online through A.T. Still University. I also teach a biostats course online for the dental hygiene department that DSU Online actually helped me build. And I think it's a really great course. The students have liked it. It's got a lot of innovation in it. And I think that was kind of a reason why I was asked to kind of help with this from a faculty perspective too, because I've had such great help from Dixie Online in building my online course. So that's it about me. I'm just excited to share some of my experiences and hope that you guys can take some of this and implement it in your courses. So back to you, Marc.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Everyone see a slide there, authentic learning. Okay, let me just adjust the rest of my screen here so I can see people as well. Okay, well, Lisa and I are going to start off talking about authentic learning and the value of it. And then as we go through the presentation, we'll, of course, invite activity from you and your sharing as well, but we'll also sort of transition to how to do this in an online environment as well. So to start off, all right, to start off, so let's talk a little bit about why authentic learning, why this is valuable. So this is a great quote that I like. There's a tremendous difference between learning about physics and learning to be a physicist. I think this really kind of encapsulates a lot of the value anyway of what authentic learning can bring to students. What I like about this particular quote is it helps us to see that there is a difference between those two things. And in terms of when we are teaching students in our courses, and as we're designing our courses, it really is beneficial to the student if we can structure our teaching in a way that they are having the opportunity to be something, to do something in that being. So what's the difference there? If I am learning to be a physicist, I can do the things that a physicist would do. I can apply the knowledge that I either have received in this course or elsewhere or whatever. I can see the relevance to the real world as I am, again, learning to be a physicist, not just learning about physics. But there's another aspect that I think is really critical, and that is that it all of a sudden makes it student-centered. It makes it all about me, not in a selfish way, but obviously for students, we're trying to help them to feel motivated and engaged with the content. So we want it to be all about them. So if I, as a student, I have an opportunity to do something, to try something, and then that makes me all of a sudden more motivated to engage with that. Most people get additional education because they're looking to be something. So if I can practice being a physicist, then I can evaluate it. If I'm already interested in physics, then that's great. I can determine whether it's something I want to do. If I'm not so much interested in it, I can still evaluate it. Lastly, on this quote, I would say, okay, this is one piece, is sort of the second half of that, which talks about the fact that having isolated facts and formula doesn't make it meaningful unless I know what these cool tools do for me as a student. So anyway, this is just one way to, I think, see the value of authentic learning. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is authentic learning. All of you are here and you probably know what it is as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the definitions of it. So as we've looked at lots of things, researching and exploring more about authentic learning, this two-word phrase is just something that comes up every time, right? It's always real world. So this is the first thing to start with. I mean, if you're going to create authentic learning, think real world. Now, there's a bunch of other things and pieces to it, right, that we're going to talk about, but this is where you start. You think about your instruction, you think about your students, and you go for real world. Now, there are some more things that I'm going to cover here in just a second, but before boring you with like all of those, there's a whole bunch of things that are sort of aspects of authentic learning, in addition to the real world piece. I'm just going to share a short story. Now, this is old school web. This is early 2000s. You can see the copyright at the bottom there is 2002. So this dates me. This is when I was in my master's program at Utah State. But I'm sharing this because this was the product or the result of one of the most powerful learning experiences for me in my education thus far. And it was highly authentic. So let me just tell the brief story on this, and then we'll use it to sort of highlight the characteristics of authentic learning generally. So as I said, this is a master's program. In this particular course, which was sort of towards the end of the program, we were broken up into groups. So it was a group project. We were collaborating with one another. And essentially, at the beginning of the course, this is somewhat of a capstone, you could say. We each, as a group, had the responsibility to identify a instructional design need somewhere. Could be on campus, could be off campus, didn't matter. It was our job to identify it. And then reach out and essentially see if we could get that as a project that we could actually complete. This was the one that we completed. It was on campus. One of my group mates or whatever just happened to be in this office when he heard about this. But anyway, we had the responsibility to then determine the needs, determine the strategy and the direction that needed to happen, and to create this piece of instruction. So this was Utah State had at that time something called the Student Orientation Advising Registration Program, which was an on-campus experience. They wanted an online experience. So we had that opportunity to create that online experience, and this was the iteration of it. So I say iteration because there were a lot of iterations after that. This was the first iteration of it. Okay, so thinking about what is authentic learning and how we can identify those pieces. So I already talked about real world relevance. So this was clearly a really relevant topic for us. We had the opportunity to create instruction, which is what our master's degree was about, in an online environment as it happened, which was also a big part of that degree. Ill-defined problems are important. So we weren't given, like a really set, this is how you do this assignment. We had to essentially solve the problem of finding a project to do and then actually solving it. Sustained investigation. So this is something that typically, not necessarily typically, but it can be, and it's valuable for the authentic learning, the real world experience, to be sustained over a period of time rather than in a very short period of time, of a few minutes or something like that. Over time, it's better for that real world experience to happen, because in the real world, as we know, rarely are problems solved, in a one hour meeting or a 5-minute meeting or whatever. Collaboration. So we had a lot of collaboration as a group. That's how the real world works. We all know that. Lots of committees and meetings and conversations. Interdisciplinary. So in that particular project, we had to break ourselves up into roles of project management, roles of a computer programmer, someone who's actually doing the instructional design on it, multiple disciplines getting involved in that. Student choices. Well, to our consternation, we had the opportunity to choose a project and find a project. But that's also important. It empowers students to get through the project and be engaged. Polished product. Well, 20 years ago, that was a polished product from our perspective. Nowadays, not so polished, but at the time, that was what we created. And lastly, multiple interpretations and outcomes. So there are lots of different approaches, right? It wasn't a single correct answer here. We had to explore and try different things. Well, lastly, and I should say, Lisa's going to show a more sort of distilled version of this here in a minute. But lastly, before I turn it over to Lisa, wanted to share another part about why authentic learning. So part of the why here, this is a collection of research that we've found about what's beneficial to students about authentic learning. So it is student-centered. I already mentioned that, but evidence shows that it actually increases the motivation and effort from your students. That's what we all want. We want our students to engage and put in that effort. Evidence shows that happens. Better student satisfaction of the learning experience. So again, that's what we want of our students. We want them to have a satisfying experience that they've learned. It promotes higher level thinking. All of these bullets, when I think about it anyway, make a lot of sense when I think about what an authentic learning activity entails. It entails doing these things. It does require higher level thinking. It increases learning and retention of the information. It increases critical thinking, communication, problem solving, collaboration skills. All those things in my SOAR project, all those things were utilized. And then, of course, better pass rates. Lastly, these are all things that are beneficial to the student, right? But as instructors, we want all this stuff. This means success, right? This means this is what we want from our students, and therefore it helps us. One thing that Lisa also pointed out is that our authentic learning experiences, because they're real world, can be used as useful documentation for accreditation as well. So with that, I'll give it over to Lisa.
I was muted. Thanks, Mark. You're going to have to control the slides because rather than flipping back and forth between the screen sharing. So we talked about what authentic learning is. It's a real world application of what we would like our students to know. And we've talked about why it's important, which it helps promote engagement. It really helps with learning, helps the students make the connections between what they're doing just sitting in a classroom and how it's going to be important for them. So it's like it's all well and good for us to say, this is what it is, and this is why we want you to do it, but we need to give you some how. How can you do this in your classroom? What are the steps you can take to start making a goal towards having your teaching and your students' learning be that authentic experience? And what has been found through research is that there are 4 main themes that support this authentic learning. So we want to find real world problems that our learners will engage in once they become professionals. So we want to look at where they're going to be and look at the real world problems that they might encounter. And then we need to develop activities that they can use that will help with their thinking skills to be able to solve these problems once they get out into the real world. We can do that with discussion. We want our learners to be able to talk to each other, to discuss these problems-based learning. And one of the big things is giving the students a choice. Marc mentioned that earlier in what he did earlier in his master's degree, and how choice is really important. So these are the 4 themes that really support. We need real world problems. We want activities that engage the students and practice their thinking skills, that can encourage them to speak to each other and also other people in professions where they want to be, and give them choice. Choice is huge. If you allow a student, if you give them a choice to develop their learning in something that really interests them, they'll get a much deeper learning of what it is you are trying to teach them, because they will relate it to things that interest them and possibly things that they're going to need to be able to do in the future. So how do you get started with this? So I remember in dentistry, this is a little bit of a comparison, but I remember going to a class about tooth mobility. And it was 7 steps from class 3 mobility to rock solid. And you can, look at these steps in anything, from one starting point to a rock solid understanding. And the first 3 steps were occlusion, occlusion, occlusion. And what occlusion is in dentistry is how you bite together. And if your teeth are not biting together properly, you will never be able to solve a tooth mobility issue. So the first thing you need to make sure is that the teeth are not biting in such a way that they're continuing to cause the problem. So occlusion, occlusion, occlusion. That was the first 3 steps. So when we're talking about an authentic learning environment, the first 3 steps are focus on the student, focus on the student, focus on the student. So really get to know your students. Authentic learning and teaching is so student-centered. Now, can you take your abstract concept that you want the students to be aware of at the end of the course and relate it to their interests, their needs, their goals, what their future are going to be? That's the intention. So, and allow them the choice to do that. So try to match the course concepts, your objectives, with the lives of the students, with the lives that they are currently, but also the lives that they are going to have in the future. And see how you can match what it is you want to convey to them that's important for their learning to the big picture, to the real world context for the content that you're giving to them. And then try and fit how you would like them to experience and learn that concept to that. So we're going to take probably about 3 to 5 minutes now on this next activity that I'd like us to take just a minute back to reflect. And I'd like you to think of the students in your classroom, the students that are in your classroom right now, and where they're going to be 2 years after graduation. They could be in lots of different careers, but what after they've graduated, 2 years after they've graduated, so where they're going to be at, and what skills or outcomes specifically from your course do you envision them using? How what you have helped them learn is going to help them in their future career 2 years from graduation. Because if you're teaching, first year introductory classes, you've got to go a little bit further than 2 years because they may not even be graduated at 2 years. But after graduation, how are the skills that your objectives of your courses going to be relevant to them in that 2 years? And then when you look at what skills are going to be useful for them, how they're going to be able to implement them in that real world 2 years after graduation, what could you implement from that into your teaching now? So I'm gonna give just a couple of minutes, and then possibly if any of you want to share, like, okay, where you see your students being, and if this is helpful to envision that, and what might you be able to take from that vision into your teaching now. So let's just have a couple of minutes to think about that, maybe write some things down. If you want to share anything in the chat, that would be great. And we'll just give you a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, also put them in the chat, raise your hand, or just ask whatever you want to do. Maybe we should play some music.
Did you want some music, Lisa? Did you say?
Some Jeopardy music. Does anyone have anything that they've thought about they'd like to share, that they'd either like to speak or put in the chat? That you're like, my students would be doing this after graduation and they would be using this skill from my course.
I have a thought. So I'm actually teaching a section of the Trailblazer Connections course this semester. And the thing I was thinking about is like what I remember from my college experience, because I went to Dixie for the first couple of years. And the thing that I remember most is just the people that I met with and studied with. So I think anytime that in an authentic assessment that we can involve them getting to know people or working with people or organizations outside of the school or whatever, or organizations within the school, I think that those are the things that they'll remember and that they'll carry on after school. So that's what I was thinking about.
Anyone else?
Saw Janet's comment in the chat about teaching Excel spreadsheet software. And she said, no matter their career, they will probably be using Excel. I found that to be the case in every job I've ever had. It paid to have spreadsheet knowledge. So that's great that Janet, one of the hallmarks of her spreadsheet courses is she gives students an opportunity to actually do and work out problems in Excel, in the actual spreadsheet environment, which is very valuable.
So,
Janet, I'm glad you.
I was
go
going
ahead,
to say,
please.
thank you, Terry. The only thing I wish that I could do is help them understand that they really will use it. I'm particularly the younger students, I think they have a hard time understanding that they really will use it, not only in their career, but also in their more advanced courses. I love it when I have maybe a little bit older student who actually has a job and is taking my course, because they get so excited when they learn. They might know Excel, but we learn something new and they're so excited. Oh, wow, I didn't know Excel could do this. And they're actually using it at the time. But that's kind of rare to have a student that's working in a job, as you know, at the time they're taking the class.
Jenna,
I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah.
I have just one quick comment, Lisa. Jenna, I'm glad you shared that, because as Terry mentioned, Excel is used so widely everywhere, every discipline, every profession. I think that's a great opportunity to give your students the opportunity to do some assessments or some activities using Excel in their chosen discipline, or even if it's not a discipline, and even if it's just an interest of theirs, that would be a way to engage them and give them an opportunity to feel a little bit more motivated, perhaps. And then, as you mentioned, perhaps that's an opportunity for them to see how it really may be used in their field. So great example, I think.
So Mark, if you will switch to the next slide. So we're actually going backwards. So we gave you that little activity to think about. So now we're going to look back at our four themes. And Janet, I just love that Excel example, because yes, they will be using it in the future. So how can you make that relevant to a new student in the classroom that is like, what use is Excel going to be to me? So look at real world problems that, engage with your students, find out what their interests are, where they are wanting to be in a couple of years, and then design assessments that you can use with several students in that have different interests, that they can customize that assignment to themselves and their own interests. So with Excel, if you had students that are going towards the medical field, you could design a project in such a way that they could choose how to use Excel that may be pertinent to their specific professional choice down the road. And so if you go through these themes, if you look at real world problems that you could use, have the students talk to each other. And that was something that Jordan said in his Trailblazer Connection class, discourse amongst a community of learners. So these 4 themes are things that you can use, because as educators, we know that the students are going to use the skills that we are trying to help them develop, but they don't know. So part of our responsibility to them is to give them some direction as to how this information will be pertinent to them in the future. And that's what authentic learning helps us do, that we make that connection between the abstract concept of, look at Excel, it's an amazing tool that you will be using, but we need to help them make that extra step to the actual concrete, oh yeah, I can use it. Say I'm going to go into business and I'm going to need it to be able to track payroll, or I'm going to be able to use it just to track my home budget expenses, all of those kind of things, but in a real world environment, and give the student a choice as to, they need to do this assignment, but they have a choice as to how they frame it, how they relate the information that we're trying to help them build those skills, how they can do it through something that's interesting to them. Is that making sense with these 4 themes now that you've had a chance to think about where they're going to be in a couple of years? So that's some steps we can give you as to how you can implement this, because we all know now what it is and why it's important, but the how is the most difficult step to me. I feel like I work in teaching dental hygiene. I'm very fortunate that dental hygiene is, we teach what they are in the clinic, what they are going to be doing. So, but trying to relate something in a microbiology course about a specific bacterium to what they will actually be doing in the clinic, in the clinical environment, can be difficult. But that's what authentic learning is about, is relating the classroom objectives, the classroom ideas to where they are going to be when they get out in their chosen career. Do you want to go to the next?
Looks like Kelly has a question before we move on. Go ahead, Kelly.
First of all, the students that Jordan are in his connections class, they're very lucky. He's amazing. I hear great things. I have some students that know him and have been through it. Marc and Lisa, this is singing in my heart. I love this authentic learning. I teach family comm, small group comm, and interpersonal communications. And I have your students, Lisa, that have dental hygiene, and I tell them, if you can't communicate to your patients, you're not going to do very well as a dental hygienist. You may be the very best in technical skills, but you've got to communicate with them. And so, for example, if I give you 10, just like this very brief little thing, in small group, I tell them at the very beginning, by the way, there's some research out, 27%, if we're lucky, of people that get students that get a degree will work in that field, right? Or even a similar field. We know that that's going to be the case. So I tell them right up front, the very first day of class, just because you're going to be in this, you're going to comm major, especially a comm major. But I have them in the small group, for example, they have to every single day talk to each other in small groups. They do what we're talking about. So whatever the topic is, they're actually doing that, whether it be online or in the class. So I love what you guys are doing. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you sharing.
back to Mark.
Okay. So we're going to run through a couple of examples of online authentic learning experiences that we're aware of. And then we'll start with that, I guess. So the first one I'm going to share is a Calculus 1 course. And this is from an institution that I worked at a few years ago. But this was, again, an online course. And one of the ways, there are a lot of ways, again, a lot of sort of methods, I guess, to implement authentic learning experiences. So case-based learning is an option. Problem-based learning is another great one. So for this particular course, we implemented problem-based learning. So this one happened to be about so what we did with the calculus course is we couched all of the content, that is all of the formulas and calculations that you do in calculus within the context of real world problems. And so what I'm going to share here is how an online student encountered those problems and encountered the content at the same time, again, in order to implement that authentic learning which leads to greater motivation and engagement. So by the way, each one of these problems, so in this case, the angioplasty problem lasted 1 to 2 weeks, and then they would move on to another problem. So that was one of those examples, I guess, where you've got some sort of sustained engagement in a particular problem. So they started with a real world problem. So students were basically given a real world problem. So in this case, the real world problem was, as if you're familiar with angioplasty, so there's a stent. This is part of the I guess the treatment for blood vessels that are clogged or close to it. So they put a stent in, which they, as you can see the illustration, right? So with the stent, the balloon there inflates with water, actually, and expands the area within the blood vessel that is constrained, which of course increases the flow. The balloon deflates, and then they're able to pull that out while the stent stays in there, right? So that was the problem that they were given. They weren't given any calculus yet, no formulas or anything like that. That was the real world problem. So then the next, and this video was used as a way to introduce that. The next step, let me go, there we go. That'll keep playing, sorry. So the next step in this problem solving, in this problem-based learning process is that students then discussed with their peers online in a discussion board what they know and what they don't know about solving this problem. So this happened to come, I think week 3 or 4 or something in the course. So they will have had already some exposure to, concepts and whatever else. But that's where they discuss what they know and don't know about the problem. How do we approach it? That kind of thing within their peers. After they post what they know and what they don't know about it, they're given additional instruction to fill in whatever knowledge gaps they may have. So that additional instruction included, videos. There was some short narration from the instructor, some additional practice problems. That was the additional information that they were given to fill in those knowledge gaps. The students then, of course, take that and apply that knowledge and skills to the real world problem in order to figure out. So what I forgot to mention, what was the problem here is that the wall, and I'm certainly not in the medical field, so I'm just going to share what I know as being part of the team that did this. The rate at which the walls of the blood vessel expand when that balloon is inflated can only sort of happen within a certain rate, or otherwise it's a health issue, it's a safety issue. So that the problem that the students were presented with at the very beginning was you need to figure out the rate to inflate that balloon so that the expansion of the walls of the blood vessel happens within safe parameters. That was the problem. So after getting all that new knowledge, they can then apply it to the problem, and then they submit that as their assignment, basically in solving that real world problem, which of course at that point the instructor gives feedback. So that was one example. That was the process that was gone through in an online course. And there were a number of other problems. The whole course was built around problems. And so some of the other ones were in energy production, and also in light rail transportation. There was the problem there was what's a safe acceleration and deceleration rate for drivers in a light rail, drivers of light rail. And then the last one, at least that's shown on this page, was in a polluted lake. When is it safe to swim? Because the input is coming with fresh water, the output is removing pollution. So that was another problem that was real world that they had to solve through this process. I'm gonna share one more. This one will be quicker. This is a technical writing class here at Dixie State, actually. And again, this is online. This is a little bit less involved in terms of implementing it into an online course and designing it. But the students in this course are expected to provide technical writing services to a community client. So that'd be a local client that they identify. So they're asked as a group, again, they're put in groups here, they need to collaborate to identify a client that's local, that may have some of these needs. They consult with the client, talk with them about what their needs may be, and they identify a communication problem specifically. That's what technical writers solve, right? In the process of doing that, they're supposed to identify an artifact to help solve that problem. So an artifact here might be the production of a manual or the production of a handbook or some similar type of communication artifact that they would actually produce. And then they create that artifact as a product for that particular community client. So without going through all of those themes, but that Lisa shared, if you think about each of these examples, there are real world problems that are helping learners to engage in really the work of professionals, and that's what authentic learning is. There were inquiry activities where thinking skills are needed and happening. There's collaboration, there's discourse among a community of learners, and then there's student empowerment through choice as well. Okay, next part we're going to talk about is there are sort of degrees of authenticity as well. So what we've just talked about, I think on the scale of how authentic are pretty good examples. But as Lisa and I talked, again, as Lisa mentioned, the difficult part of this is implementing this into your course, designing it into your course. So as we do that, it's important to think about, to what degree is it realistic and feasible to implement the authenticity in your course? Well, we should be shooting for the most authentic, obviously. But these three examples here, so going down the left side here, an inauthentic way to implement some sort of assessment would be just to ask a student to explain a data set. A somewhat more authentic, or in this case, realistic way would be to ask the student to design a house using specific mathematical formulas and shapes. So taking that data set and using that in a particular way, that would be an application of that data set. But a more authentic way, an authentic way would be to say, okay, put this student into a professional experience here as much as possible, or simulate it. Ask them to design and build a model house that meets standards and client demands. So again, as we're thinking about what authentic experiences we can implement, we want to push toward that far right side, right? Take the principles that we are teaching and sure, apply them, but how do we make them become a professional experience for them so that, again, they can do. That's an important aspect to look at. Okay, I'm going to send it back to Lisa and we'll talk about the online aspect of this. You're muted, Lisa.
Thanks. So initially, if we teach online, I assume all of us do teach online, there are some constraints to teaching online, but I would argue that online teaching actually allows us more flexibility in having this authentic teaching environment, because there are so many benefits to the online environment where we can have the student go outside of the classroom, the computer screen. So even more than a classroom setting. So technology, they have immediate access to the technology anywhere. And our technology allows for lots of different types of computer simulations. Jordan and I have been working on some other simulations for dental hygiene, which really would have application for the online learning environment too. So they have a much greater access to data information research, which can be used in the authentic learning experience online. We can give them exposure to information in almost any form. We have videos we can use, as I said, simulations where they can go in specific to their chosen profession down the line. Collaboration, again, I would argue, can really happen across distances if it is designed well and managed well. In the online discussion area, even real-time or asynchronous. So we, in the online environment, you can encourage group work, collaboration, communication, interaction, again, synchronously or asynchronously. So in the asynchronous environment, students have more time to reflect on what they want to say, to really think about the concepts being presented, and then have time to answer. But also you can mix it with a synchronous environment if that is the way your online course is built, where they could have synchronous discussion as well. So there's so much flexibility in the online environment to be able to do things in real time or not, and for external resources to be able to be pulled in and used in the online classroom. So how can you do that? Can you switch slides for me, Mark? So explore all the resources you have outside of the computer screen or the textbook, outside of the classroom, because when you do teach face-to-face, you are in some degrees, yes, you can bring things into your classroom from outside, but you are, in some ways, you have the constraints of a classroom. In the online environment, you actually don't. So you can explore to a much greater degree and allow them and you explore with them into their own interests, their majors, their careers, what they do outside of school, and see if you can bring that into the assignments and the activities that you ask them to do. Be aware of the technology that is available. Have them, and you can also assist them in getting community internships and partnerships, giving them the tools they need to go look at the real world environment and create the interactions that they need, as Jordan was talking about in the Trailblazer Connections. In the online environment, you can give them assignments and activities where they go and find things outside of their computer classroom that they have to go and speak to people in the community. So, and also give them assignments to develop these partnerships. We can help broker them as faculty and through the institution itself, but we can also have them broker some of these partnerships themselves, go to libraries, schools, businesses, so to make it more real world. So we have about 10-15 minutes left. We've kind of looked at 10 minutes, but I think 5 minutes is going to be enough, Mark, for the next little breakout session. We were just going to break out and have a little discussion between how do you think you could apply some of these principles to your own online courses, and talk to each other about things that you could use. Mark's also going to send a PDF of ways that authentic learning has been implemented in the past in different environments, in nursing and health admin and theater, that you could possibly take a look at for some ideas. So there's
I just sent that. If you want to take a look at the chat, I just sent that. So hopefully you can download it from the chat in this right here in the Zoom. Let me know if you can't get it or if it doesn't work. So. And Lisa, I've created the breakout rooms. So as Lisa mentioned, we'll break out for about 5 minutes. And so we just want you to, again, we sent you the PDF that might help you with additional ideas and additional thoughts for your own discipline as you think about applying, what others have done to your own. And so we're going to do that breakout room right now. I think there should be 4 of you in each, or one has 3 right now. So we'll have to, Terry, I think you're a host, but once I can't assign you as a host, we'll have you go into one. I'm going to go ahead and open those rooms, and then we'll bring you back in about 5 minutes. Did everyone get an invitation? Oh, there we go. And then Terry, if you want to join room 2, that's the one that has 3.
Okay, I can see if it will let me. There we go.
Oh, looks like the 3 of us are all together.
Okay, let's see. Janet, let's see. Janet, did you happen to get a invitation? There we go. Okay. So Terry, you're welcome to jump in that. Janet, we can have the conversation with you here as well, or you can join into either one of the rooms. Do you have an invitation on that?
I did, and I clicked on it, but then it looked like it was sending me to the room, and I don't know why I came back here.
Okay, I'm going to try again here.
I'll try again, because then I did get it.
I think that may have sent her.
Might
We'll
have
see.
been. I can't go anywhere. It's not letting me. I didn't get an invitation or.
Okay, yeah. So Lisa, you can't. You don't have the option to like move into one or anything. Maybe it's like one person can do it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm getting.
Okay. Gotcha. Do you have a preference which room you go in? Just room 1 or 2? Okay, I'll put you on round 1 and I'll go into 2 then.
Okay.
Okay, and then again, I guess it'll be like 12:52, 12:53, something like that. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So room 1 for you.
There we go.
There we go. All right. I think we got everybody back, right? Lisa, did you want to follow up on this or did you want me to?
I could just follow up with a couple of little things. I don't know if anyone out of our breakout session wants to share something that they learned that they thought was really cool, was a really good idea. I've got some things written down if you don't want to, but I'd like to hear it from you guys. So Becky or Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa forced us to do authentic learning. It was authentic. We talked about real stuff, what pertains to us right now in the moment. So you modeled it, right? You modeled us doing the breakout room and learning how to do this. I don't know what you're wanting us to actually, what you're thinking of. If you calling me to actually share a specific thing or that I shared earlier, or no?
Or anything that you learned from somebody else that shared something that you were like, hey, I could use that in my class, or that was a really good idea, or.
Well, I'll tell you the one on the Excel spreadsheet Becky mentioned, or actually Janet, about doing a budget. So the class is family communication. Let's just use that one, family communication. Well, what's one of the top things that causes divorce? Finances, money. Well, hello, that's like that's real authentic stuff right there. So we talk about that, how they're going to do that, who's going to pay the bills, and how they're going to do up a budget, and teach them how to use a simple Excel spreadsheet. It can save their marriage down the road in a few years. I hear about that. So we talk very openly about this kind of stuff.
So, thanks, Kelly. Mark, did you guys like, just that to me was a very specific, authentic assignment, that to learn how to use an Excel spreadsheet, but to relate it absolutely to a real world environment, to design a family budget, to design a budget, you know, to go on vacation, to design a budget to be able to buy gifts for holiday gifts, you know, that kind of thing. Kelly mentioned a really good assignment that I would expect to be extremely difficult in conflict resolution, where he has students go solve a conflict with somebody and then report back. That to me, it could have profound results, but that's absolutely real world application of something in the classroom. Did you have anything in your breakout session at all, or?
Yeah, we had some good conversation. I came right in the middle of Joe Lovell's, and so I actually wasn't able to determine his example, but with Janet, we did talk a little bit about opportunities within her Excel course to try to find some of the interests actually of some of the students, and either make the assignments flexible enough to be able to do the assignments within the context of their interests or majors, or even create some assignments that are specific to some of those majors that she finds out from her students. So we had good conversation.
Well, it looks like we only have a minute, so I don't know whether any of you have any last questions for us. We did send you that PDF with some ideas. This PowerPoint has a lot of kind of ABC steps, so hopefully it was interesting and useful. So thank you for inviting me to speak with you, Mark.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. And I should just mention that I hope all of you know that DSU Online Learning Designers are always available. There's one assigned to your college, always available to have conversations about authentic learning and anything else related to your teaching online. So I hope you know that. Thanks for the opportunity.
They're great. They
Thank
help.
you.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark and Lisa, and we sure appreciate you and taking the time with us. Maybe you could stay on the line for just a minute if anyone had a specific question. I'll stop the recording though.
Absolutely.